Hello all, we're going to have a look at this 35 marker for family. So discuss the influence of social change on families. It came up in 2015 and it doesn't follow our formula. So it doesn't have the word view, may, extent, and it doesn't give a statement. So it doesn't give you those terms to tell you that it would be a debate. And it doesn't use the word useful, reasons, contributions, or theory. It doesn't follow the formula. So it's very challenging to try and access the question and try and see what it wants from you. So discuss the influence. So the influence of social change on families. So what social changes have happened and what influence have they had on families? It sounds like, it feels a bit more like a 15 marker. So I did originally start planning it as a 3-4-3 against, even though it doesn't indicate it's a debate. It doesn't work. You can't argue against the point that there hasn't been social change. You could argue for and against whether social change has been good or not and use the theories to do that, but you can't argue social change hasn't happened. So my first paragraph is going to be that a key influence or a key social change is the introduction of the pill and women working. So I'm going to do women working in the pill. So I'm going to do Wilkinson. For Wilkinson, we've had a feminisation of the labour force or a gender quake. For Wilkinson, we've had a feminisation of the labour force or a gender quake. Ultimately, a shift in the economy. To more service sector work, which is, I'm going to put benefited women. I do this quite a lot. The economic structure still disadvantaged women, so target benefited them is a loose term. But the shift in the economy definitely has really enabled women much, much more than their sisters before them. For Lambert, there's been a growth in fit women. So women in their 20s and 30s who are financially independent. So you've had that Wilkinson, that gender quake, Lambert, that growth of those fit women. And I'm just going to add in here, we've obviously had the introduction of the pill. In 1969, and I'm just going to, because I remember from the second year that Oakley argues that this has been a key revolutionary change. After that, women went into university in record numbers, into employment. The pill was a revolutionary change from being able to control your reproductive consequences if you do or don't want children, if you are obviously a heterosexual woman. The introduction of the pill, which Oakley notes is a key revolutionary change. So I'm going to do those three. Then I'm going to say this shows, going to do my AO2. So this shows that women working, this shows the pill, and as a result, women working so this shows the pill and women working has had an influence and changed families It's had an influence and changed families, causing a growth in singlehood. Women living alone, no children, no partners. It's caused a growth in singlehood and resulted in a decline in fertility / birth rates. As women now, so the pill, and as a result of the pill, women working, has had an influence and changed families, causing a growth in singlehood and as a result, a decline in fertility or birth rates. The key change is resulting in decline in fertility and birth rates. I might just add this, as women can have fewer children or none at all if they choose. So the key change is the pill and they're kind of women working together, and the change on families has been a growth in women who live alone and also a massive reduction in the number of birth rates, the number of children being born, because we can choose how many we have or choose to completely never have them at all, which is perfectly fine. However, for Lambert, she notes that this social change has had negative effects. There's an aching loneliness and a Bridget Jones syndrome. However, Lambert notes that all of this social change has had negative effects. Some women experience aching loneliness or a Bridget Jones syndrome. In the evaluation, I'm finding that I'm having to criticise whether that social change has kind of been good or not. Because again, it's hard to argue against that this social change has happened and that it's definitely had this impact on families, because it has. So yeah, that's my paragraph 1. Paragraph 2. So, higher expectations. Higher expectations is an influence. Higher expectations is an influence and had a key impact or change on families. Giddens notes that we now seek confluent love, a pure relationship, and deep emotional intimacy. We only stay if we experience or receive satisfaction. This means relationships are less stable. So we only generally stay in a relationship or marriage now if they are our confluent love, they are kind of our soulmate, and we only stay for as long as we receive satisfaction. It means that relationships now are much less stable. He's making no criticism of that. He's just saying that's how it is. For Drew, when people who marry have higher expectations, and if they're not met, we generally start again. Generally put Drew and Giddens together. And largely just to kind of add a third for flower or flora and bee. Canon, marriage is no longer economically necessary. For women. Therefore, fewer choose to marry. No longer needed. So those three. I'm not going to touch on divorce because I'm going to do divorces in another paragraph. So I'm trying to just do higher expectations. So this shows that higher expectations oops. This shows that higher expectations. So this shows that higher expectations have influenced. This shows that higher expectations have influenced or changed families, causing a decline in marriage rates. It's changed families and caused a decline in marriage rates. Many now opt out of marriage as expectations aren't met. And it is no longer necessary or needed for women. So I'm saying definitely had a change. It's meant that people just don't get married. We have a declining rate of marriage. Women don't need it, and people are seeking other alternatives. However, again, this is quite tricky, but I'm going to say, however, for new right thinkers like Denzin and Murray, this highlights less commitment to children and families. This highlights less commitment to children and families, and therefore this social change is not beneficial to anyone. Just kind of oppose it with New Right, suggesting they don't think that social change is good or helpful. Okay, 2 key social changes. Third key social change, because I'm thinking, or an alternative key social change, and one kind of a New Right thread. So I think I'll go to the New Right thinkers in childhood. So TV and media. Has influenced social change within families. For Phillips, the culture of disciplined parenting is breaking down, and it's undermined disciplined parenting is breaking down due to liberal ideas that have undermined Parents' authority. Remember, against smacking. And the media is more influential in shaping children's lives. So we're going to use media as our key theme. For Palmer, parents are too busy working and instead provide electronic babysitters. Too busy working and instead provide their children with electronic babysitters. This has led to a growth in ADHD and autism. And for Postman, I always put these three together. The TV is instrumental in blurring the lines of childhood and adulthood. To those three writers. This shows that TV and media has caused social change in families. It shows that TV and media has caused social change within families. Creating greater conflict and so it's creating greater conflict between parents and children, because I want to be more treated as an adult, but I'm still, 13. It creates greater conflict within families and is creating generations with additional needs who struggle with additional needs who haven't been socialised as effectively. Remember, then you write. However, so she's the same evaluation here. However, for Gittins, this theory of social change and its impacts on family are not accurate. There, she's arguing that their view of social change and impacts upon families are not accurate. Children are now objects of consumption. They bring parents joy and pleasure. So we don't just kind of throw them in front of a TV and hope for the best. Okay, so I've gone to kind of the diversity grid, also diversity grid, childhood grid. This is definitely a mixture of all the grids rather than kind of going to one and staying there. And then I'm going to talk about roles. So one of the key social changes may be that the family roles within the family are much more equal or balanced. It's a paragraph. I'm going to do roles. Okay, so a key influence or social change has been a sharing of roles within the household. So for Pau and Gurney, they support. So for Pau and Gurney, I'm taking the first paragraph of the roles grid. Pau and Gurney, they support the correlation between women working and increased participation by men with domestic tasks. For Coltrane, For Coltrane, delayed childbirth caused husbands. So for Coltrane, delayed childbirth caused husbands to complete more housework. And lastly, for Wilmot and Young, they found that there was a sense of balance and a symmetrical nuclear family developing. So this shows that a key influence or social change has been fairer distribution of household domestic chores. Key influence of social change has been a fairer distribution of household domestic chores due to delayed childbirth. And this has meant that families families are less patriarchal. So the social change is the distribution. Well, the social change, I suppose, is really the delayed childbirth, and the impact upon the family is a fairer distribution of household chores and less patriarchal or male dominance. However, for Oakley, this change on families is superficial. This change within families is superficial. This change within families is superficial. So basically, again, you want to, if for an A or an A star, you want the AO3 to just do a little nod back to the question. And so for Oakley, this change within families is superficial. Most women still for Hochschild perform a double shift. And if anything, changes in work have resulted in more work for women, not less. It's a bleak thought, but arguing that the social change has not been good. The social change has actually led to double shifts or triple shifts, doing the night feeds, all that jazz. Okay, so that is paragraph 4. Paragraph 5 is I'm going to do divorce. So kind of as legislation. So paragraph 5 is a key social change and influence has been the Divorce Reform Act. So, Divorce Reform Act, it's in 1969, and it introduced no-fault divorce. So you can just cite irreconcilable differences as your reason. It introduced no-fault divorce, and divorces went from 58,000 to 119. Divorces went from 58,000 to 119. Hart notes, so Nikki Hart notes that the increase in divorce is due to increased opportunities to escape. I'm not going to put her other points because I've already kind of touched on, more conflict and higher expectations in the other paragraphs. I'm just going to do the opportunities to escape marriage. For good, he notes that we now make smaller inputs into the quality of families and marriages. And we no longer marry for practical reasons. No longer marry for practical reasons or accept loveless marriages. So kind of perhaps in the past you think, well, I don't love them, I just don't think I should marry them, so I don't see what love's got to do with it. So no longer accept loveless marriages. And then Allen and Crow, I think that's a Tina Turner song, isn't it? Allen and Crow note that relationships, so marriages, now, got distracted with my Tina Turner comment. Marriages, I'm going to break into song. Marriages are now relationships, not an agreement. So basically, marriages are now a relationship. So it's very similar to Good's point that it's a relationship. And we again are seeking that love and satisfaction. It's not an agreement. And if we're unhappy, we leave. The kind of I'm kind of touching on higher expectations, but dominantly I'm trying to focus on divorce. So this shows that legislation has caused social change in families. It shows that legislation has caused social change within families, creating more lone parents, and blended families as a result. So the social changes, the Divorce Reform Act, and the impact upon families is more blended and more lone parents. However, really struggling here now with evaluation, but however, I'm going to do the Burgoyne and Clark. However, there's not an acknowledgement that blended families, all this change, there's not an acknowledgement that blended families, all this change means some families now suffer from problems which other family types do not. You see, I'm trying to force it in, trying to make it link to the question to make sure my AO3 tries to hit that top band. For an A or an A star, the focus of the question or terms of the question come all the way through. And this is also really challenging because there's almost like two parts to it. Be clear about what the influence or the change is, and then the impacts upon family. It's like a two-part question almost. Okay, very last one. It's paragraph 6. I always aim for 6, as should you. So paragraph 6, a key social change is the growth of individualism and choice. Quite like this. I always use these ones. So for Beck, we can now make a range of decisions about the kinds of relationships we want. For Stacey, she sees the roles in the family as ambivalent. And all this individualism has led to the growth of cohabitation. And for coast, it means that teenagers now expect it. And it's seen as a valid living arrangement. Most of us want to test the water, make sure we can live together and would be happy. So 3 sociologists. And at the end of that paragraph, I'm going to say, so this shows that we've had, so this shows individualism and choice has changed families. And it's caused a growth in singlehood. No, it caused a growth in cohabitation and all new family types. By single parents by choice. Could, if you wanted to, put a day in there. And single parents by choice. As we largely choose now what benefits us. Not necessarily a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing anyway. However, the amount of change is being overstated by Crow. Amount of change, I use that quite a lot. The amount of change is just being overstated here by Crow. And for, because this is in the evaluation for code, and for Kieran, it is difficult to generalise. About the reason for cohabitation and the influence this has had. Again, trying to come back to the question. Okay, so those are my 6 paragraphs. In the conclusion, I'm going to say, put the conclusion up here, I think. So to conclude, key social changes have taken place. The pill, women working, and the pill, women working, decline in stigma, which I could have actually mentioned in that postmodernism paragraph, decline in stigma and individualism. These have clearly had an impact on families, creating new, diverse forms. And it creating new, diverse forms. And this can only be a good thing. I want to go a bit profound. Life is too short to settle. So life is too short to settle, and it's harmful for all. And it's harmful for all if we stay in unhealthy, unhappy environments. Ultimately, you're saying your viewpoint, But it's my viewpoint that clearly those social changes have happened. The impacts upon family are huge. It's created all these new family types. But it's my conclusion that life is far too short, and it's really harmful for children or adults to stay in unhappy, unhealthy environments. It's not good for anybody. Oh, that's a nice way to leave it. Okay, thanks. Any questions, let me know. Obviously, it's quite tricky, so we're trying to focus on some really tricky family questions. Thank you.